Welcome to the SURDS how-to video for file layouts and field definitions. The purpose of this video is to discuss the documentation and the formats of the file layouts, as well as where to find the field definitions for the individual SURDS files. So to get started, we're going to go to the main higher ed website, which is highered.colorado.gov, and it looks something like this. This is the Colorado Department of Higher Education main website, and if you click on Data and Reports, it will take you to the I3 website, which is the data warehouse, data reporting website, and this is everything regarding data for the Department of Higher Education. So this is the home page, and right there in the middle is the documentation. So if you click on documentation, you'll get a page that looks something like this. And to orient yourself to the page, at the top we have general documentation, which is going to give you access to all the individual field values, which you'll need to know at a later time in the details. Some specific field level comparisons and validation. And for this particular video, we are going to be discussing the degrees awarded file, sometimes referred to as the file called the degree file. And so there's three sections to this documentation. One is the file description, and this may be a little small in the video, but it has the details of the types of students and the types of data that should be on the file that we're looking at in this particular file, the degree file, which says that all degrees and other formal awards conferred by the Colorado Post-Secondary Institution as recognized by the Commission, and the degree file is the system for reporting all students enrolled in Colorado post-secondary education who have received a certificate, degree, or other formal award signifying the completion of a program. So that kind of gives you the general information. And if you read through the whole thing, there is a lot more detail about how to handle certain things and how to attach students to terms and to handle things like double majors and so forth. But that's the general information. But if we go back here, and rather than look at the file description, we're going to move on to the file layout. The file layout is going to describe what fields, what student information is actually included on the file. So we're going to use this as an example because this is one of the more simple files, the degree file, and they're all the file layouts for all the files are designed pretty much the same way. Where when you come in here, you're going to see the number of fields. So you have a field position and then a starting position. And the starting position refers to one type of data file, the fixed file. If we're going to create a comma delimited file, the starting position is less important, but I'll show you the difference in a moment. So if we just review this file layout for the degree file, you can see there's 26 fields, starting with record type, institution code, report period, student ID number, gender, date of birth. You can read through those. The last 7 are going to be, actually starting there with non-resident alien through race white. There's 7 fields that relate to the race ethnicity, and those are the new federal guidelines where the student can report multiple ethnicities. So they could say, they're both Hispanic and Native American. So we'll see those in a moment. So what I want to show you in this video is how to convert this file layout for the degree file and what it looks like when you create an actual data file that you're going to submit to the SURDS website. So if you keep a couple of those in mind, we'll flash back here to see what these are. But if you think of the record type, institution code, report period, which is term and year, and then a student ID, those first 4 or 5 fields, we're going to come over here and look at a template that I created. Now, I have this in Excel. I have this thing called a degree template. Now, this isn't the actual file that you would submit to SURDS, but it shows you the data for each particular field. So if we look at those, column 1, which is field 1, is record type, which we have hard-coded as a 3. That's something for this file is not going to change. The next field, field 2, is the institution code. And this is my institution code for my test college. It's 9001. So that's 4 characters. So that's field position 2. It's the second field. But if we're talking about a fixed length file, it's actually positions 2, 3, 4, and 5 because it's 4 characters. So that's position 1. This field is positions 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then the next field, which would be field 3, report term, is actually going to be the 6th character because we have 1 character there and then 4 there. So we have 5 characters taken, and this will be the 6th. So you can kind of see how that's going. So it's easy to read in a file format like this where it's Excel, and I even have the header row. You can kind of see the descriptions. But if I were to delete this header row, it's a little more difficult to read, but still, because it's in a column format, you can figure out, oh, that's institution, this looks like term, that's the year, that's the student ID. You might not know what those are, but that's the gender column, that's the birthday, and you'll get used to those things. So if I undo that and put the headers back in there, you can see what those are. So when you're first starting out with your files, it's good to do something like this before you get it into the next format, so you can see what it looks like, have the column headers on there, and so it makes a little bit more sense. Now, when you convert your file into a format that you can submit to the website, in the previous version of SURDS, and this format is still available in the current SURDS, there's a fixed length file, and that looks something like this. So you can see it's a little more complicated just because it's all compressed together. You can't see the individual columns, but if you look closely you can make it out. So there's the 3, which was the report term, the file type. The next 4, 9001 is the institution code. There is the term 2. There's 2011. So you can kind of see how that is, but this is an example of what the file looks like as a fixed length format. It's all the columns, but there's no column separation, there's no delimiters, it's all compressed together. So that's an example of what it looks like. If there are spaces in the file, you can see there are spaces. Those are kind of placeholders, so everything is lined up. So if you come in here and your file looks something like this, and it's all kind of jumbled up, chances are the format is not going to be correct. One other thing we can look at here is the comma delimited file. And I've shown you this last, mostly because if you've been in SURDS before, or you have a little bit of familiarity with SURDS, the comma delimited file is new to SURDS. So you can see it's easier to read. You have value 3, and then here's your institution code, and there's your term. You can see it's much easier to read because it's delimited by commas. And if you want to create this file, I can show you that very quickly. If we go back to our Excel template, and we have it like this where it's built into individual columns, to create that comma delimited file, all you need to do is you say save as, and you come down here, and rather than save it as an Excel file, you select CSV, comma delimited. And in this case, I have a comma delimited, and there's a file that I have there already. So I'm going to go ahead and overwrite that one. Now you're going to get prompted here for saving the file, and you want to make sure you say to keep this format, which leaves out incompatible features. You just click yes. And so at that moment, you've saved the file. Okay, and notice here when I save this, I did have my header row in there. So I'm going to close that, come back here, and this is the file that I just created. So I'm going to open that up, and rather than open in Excel, I'm going to open up in Notepad. So you can see the file I just created. It took my Excel file, it added the columns to separate each column, and it does have my header row. So I want to delete this header row. So I'm just going to go highlight that, hit the delete button, and delete that. So at this point, all I did was take out the header row. If I save that, that is now a valid, comma delimited degree file, which I could submit to SURDS. and it will import it correctly, and then it'll validate and so forth. But that's a valid file. It does not have a header row, but the commas are okay. And if there's any problems with the size of the fields, that would come out in the validation. Now, if I wanted to take this and now I want to create a fixed length format from this, the quick way to do that is I just do a find and replace. And the program I'm using here is Notepad, which every computer should have if it's a Windows-based computer. So I'm going to come in here and just say I'm going to find every comma. That might be a little small on the screen there, but that's a comma. And I'm going to replace with nothing. So I'm just going to make sure that there's nothing in there and click replace all. And then there you go. It now removed all those delimiters and it just slid everything to the left. And so now that first column is a 3, which is my file type. 9001, my institution code, and then so forth. So you can see from my template to saving as a comma delimited and removing my header row, and then just removing the commas, I've transitioned from a fairly readable template in Excel to a comma delimited file, which I could submit to SURDS in the new version of SURDS. And then I remove the commas, and now I have a fixed length file. So as long as the data is correct, and like I said earlier, as long as the spaces that need to be there are there and the column values are the correct length, by doing that exact process, the file will be in the right format. The only thing that would mess that up, for example, in the date of birth, if you have 1978 and then instead of an 07 for July, it just said 7, that would slide everything one character to the left, and that row would be a little off. So that's probably the biggest thing, the biggest challenge with creating your files, is to make sure that if a column says it's 2 characters and it's you only have a value of 1, that you report a 01. And if it's a birthday like this, 1978 07 22, that it's not 07 and you're not giving just a 7 to the file, and then that reads 1978 722, because then that wouldn't be filling the full 8 characters. So it's little things like that that are really probably the biggest challenge with creating your file. But if you get through that, creating the files are actually not that much trouble once you do it a couple times. So hopefully this helps summarize how to find the file layouts and how to take a look at the field definitions, and you'll be on your way to submitting your first SURDS file.